The human ship Endeavour drifted through the endless black of space, its engines humming softly, a small beacon of life in a universe that seemed impossibly vast. Inside, the crew moved with quiet purpose, checking instruments, scanning distant stars, and noting tiny anomalies in the fabric of space. They were explorers, curious and daring, always chasing the unknown. No one had expected that today. Something far beyond their understanding would appear, an invisible gateway to a galaxy ruled by an empire older and stronger than any human mind could imagine. Commander Ellis stood on the bridge, his hands resting lightly on the railing, eyes scanning the holographic map projected before him. There was a faint ripple in the readings, a distortion that did not match any known star system, nebula, or asteroid belt. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the thrill of discovery. "Report," he said calmly. Lieutenant Rena, the ship's youngest officer, frowned at her console. "Commander, the readings are unusual. It's not a wormhole, not exactly. Energy signature is immense. Could be dangerous." Ellis smiled faintly. "Dangerous is relative. Humans have survived worse than unknown cosmic anomalies. Let's see what we've stumbled into." As the Endeavour drifted closer, a sudden presence filled the minds of the crew. A voice, cold, metallic, and commanding, spoke directly into their consciousness. "You trespass in Imperial space. Identify yourselves or face annihilation. B." Words were not just sound. They carried authority, power, and centuries of control. Most species would have panicked, trembling before the invisible hand of the Empire. But the humans, they simply blinked. Ellis's calm voice filled the bridge. "Tell them, we are humans. We mean no harm." Rena's eyebrows shot up. "Commander, are you sure? They just threatened to destroy us." Ellis shrugged lightly, a faint humor in his gray-streaked hair and weary eyes. "Humans don't panic. When someone yells, we survive, we adapt. That's all we've ever done." The warning came again, sharper this time, filled with the silent weight of thousands of warships and centuries of conquest. "Your presence is unacceptable. Submit or die." The humans looked at each other. Fear was natural, instinctive, but it was also useless. Fear would not protect them. Fear would not guide them. Instead, they focused on each other, on their training, on the small control they had over the situation. Commander Ellis pressed a few buttons, sending a simple communication back into the Empire's mind. "We mean no harm. We are explorers. That is all." Outside, the blackness of space seemed to thicken, almost alive, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Stars glittered coldly, distant suns indifferent to the humans' quiet bravery. And yet, inside, the Endeavour, a strange warmth spread, a feeling of shared purpose, of connection, of daring to exist where none dared to tread. Rena whispered almost to herself, "Do they understand? That we're not afraid?" Ellis's smile was calm, almost sad. "They will. Humans have a way of showing what others cannot see. We are small, yes, weak sometimes, but we endure. That endurance, it is something they do not understand yet." In that moment, the Endeavour continued its slow, deliberate journey into the unknown, drifting further into the Empire's space. The humans were nothing more than a tiny dot against infinite darkness, yet somehow, they carried with them a light the galaxy had not seen before, a light of courage, of calm defiance, of simple, unshakable humanity. No one on the ship spoke for a long moment. They did not need to. Each person felt the same pulse of anticipation and unease. They were far from home, in a place they could not comprehend, facing beings far more powerful than themselves. Yet, unlike every other species the Empire had ever encountered, the humans did not bow, did not tremble, and did not run. And in that quiet, defiant stillness, a seed was planted, a seed that would grow into something no empire could ignore. 3. Black void of space seemed endless, but suddenly distant shadows appeared on the horizon. The human crew of the Endeavour tensed, though their expressions showed calm determination rather than fear. At first they looked like mere specks, but as the ships drew closer, the true size and scale became terrifyingly clear. Imperial warships. Sleek, massive, and bristling with energy weapons that could annihilate a planet in moments. Lieutenant Rena swallowed hard, her hand hovering over the controls. Commander, their fleet. It's enormous. One touch from them, and we're dust. Absolute dust. Ellis turned slowly, his gaze steady and unshaken. I know, but we are still here. And that matters more than their size. A pulse of energy swept past the Endeavor, scanning them like an invisible finger. Sensors buzzed violently, registering every atomic movement. Then a voice, clear and commanding, penetrated the ship's communication system. This time, it was not just a threat, it was a declaration. Identify yourselves. You trespass in Imperial space. Failure to comply will result in destruction. The crew remained calm. To the Empire, this should have been defiance. But humans were different. They were not built to cower before authority. Ellis's voice, calm and even, replied, "We are humans. We explore. We do not mean harm." Valen, the lead officer of the Imperial fleet, observed the humans carefully. He expected fear, trembling, panic, reactions that every species he had encountered displayed when faced with the Empire's power. Instead, he saw something new. Calm, confidence, even a strange amusement flickering across their faces. They are unafraid, he whispered to his second-in-command, a towering being with silver-blue armor. How is this possible? The human crew, unaware of the exact thoughts of the Imperial officers, continued their work. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep of sensors. Ellis walked slowly to the observation deck and looked at the enormous ships surrounding them. They are impressive, he said almost to himself, but impressive doesn't mean invincible. Rena stared at him, astonished. Commander, are you really not afraid? Ellis smiled faintly. Fear is natural, Rena, but it doesn't help. Fear makes you freeze. It makes you weak. Courage and clear thinking, that's what keeps us alive. The Empire, used to immediate submission, decided to escalate. One warship fired a warning shot, a beam of energy that tore a path across space, striking just meters from the Endeavor. The humans felt the heat of the plasma and the vibrations through the hull. Everyone froze for a heartbeat, but no panic, no despair followed. They simply adjusted their course using the ship's minor thrusters to move slightly aside. Valen's eyes widened. They are dodging, with only a small ship, against the might of the Empire. Incredible. Ellis's crew worked together, with perfect coordination. Every movement had a purpose. Every adjustment was calculated but effortless. In that moment, the humans did something the Empire could not predict. They acted as if the threat was present, but it did not control them. Then, with a calmness that shocked even the hardened officers of the Empire, Ellis sent a message. We do not seek conflict. We only explore. Please let us pass. Valen was silent for a long moment. He had never heard a species speak to the Empire like this, with neither fear nor arrogance, just humanity. It was simple, yet powerful. He realized something unsettling. These humans were not like any other life form he had ever encountered. They were small, fragile in appearance, yet somehow unstoppable in spirit. Rena exhaled, her tension easing slightly. Commander, they're not attacking anymore. It's like they're watching us, trying to understand why we don't care. Ellis nodded. And that, Rena, is where humans always have an edge. We do not bow to fear. We do not kneel to power. We simply survive. That is enough to unsettle anyone, even an empire. The shadows of the Imperial fleet lingered around the Endeavor, scanning, analyzing, uncertain. And in that uncertainty, the humans sailed onward, calm, composed, and quietly proud. For the first time, a species had entered the Empire and shown no concern, not out of arrogance, but because courage, endurance, and humanity were stronger than fear. And somewhere in the immense darkness of Imperial command, Vaylon realized that these humans, tiny, fragile, seemingly ordinary, might just be the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. The silence that followed the first encounter did not last long. The Imperial fleet, unaccustomed to defiance or calm in the face of overwhelming power, decided it was time to test the humans. Massive warships repositioned themselves, encircling the small Endeavor. The darkness of space was broken by the cold gleam of energy cannons, weapons capable of obliterating entire planets. Inside the ship, the crew's hearts beat steadily, even as alarms screamed warnings. The red lights flashed across the bridge, illuminating tense faces, but no panic spread. Commander Ellis stood at the center, calm and resolute, his hands clasped behind his back. "Prepare the shields," he said. His voice was steady, almost gentle, yet it carried the weight of unshakable confidence. "We survive because we act, not because we fear." Lieutenant Rena's fingers flew over the console, activating the experimental energy shield. The technology was crude by Imperial standards, a small bubble of protection around the Endeavor. But humans had always been inventive. Improvisation was their strongest weapon. Outside, Vaylon and the Imperial officers watched in disbelief. "Increase firepower," Vaylon commanded. "Destroy them. Let us see if their courage is real." Beams of blue plasma lanced through the void. The Endeavor shook violently as each shot struck near its hull. Sparks flew across consoles, and the crew was thrown into motion, yet none faltered. Rena adjusted shields, calibrated thrusters, and relayed commands without hesitation. Every movement was precise, every decision quick and deliberate. A shot hit the shield dead center, creating a ripple across its surface. Sparks of energy danced, yet the shield held. The humans survived. The Empire had expected panic. They had expected fear to paralyze the crew. Instead, they saw focus, teamwork, and a strange human calm that unnerved even seasoned warriors. "Commander," Rena shouted over the alarms. "They're not stopping. If we don't do something—" Ellis raised a hand, cutting her off gently. "Do nothing except what we know. Fear will not help. Panic will only destroy us faster." The Endeavor moved with quiet elegance, weaving between massive warships. Every crew member anticipated the next attack, predicting movements like dancers in a deadly ballet. For the humans, it was terrifying, yes, but it was also another problem to solve. A challenge that sharpened their minds instead of crushing their spirits. Vaylon's sensors picked up the humans' heart rates, their nervous impulses, their biosignatures. To his shock, the readings were calm, not elevated, not frightened. Humans remained composed in the face of annihilation. It was impossible. No species in the Empire had ever survived a direct assault with such composure. "Commander," whispered Rena, how are they so calm?" Ellis's eyes, reflecting the distant stars, were steady. "Because humans know something the Empire forgets. Survival is not about hiding or obeying. It's about facing what comes and keeping your mind and heart clear. Fear has no power over us unless we allow it." Another volley of plasma struck, this time grazing the ship's outer hull. Sparks and smoke filled the bridge, yet no one screamed. Each crew member instinctively knew their role, and together they became more than a ship. They became a single organism, a small, unstoppable force of will and intellect. Vaylon's eyes narrowed. "They are not fighting us, yet they endure. Not with weapons, but with, what, resilience, nerve, courage? This cannot be." Finally, Commander Ellis raised a hand and sent a simple, calm message to the Empire. "We do not seek war. We only wish to pass. Please let us continue." The silence that followed was heavy. The Imperial officers whispered to each other, confused and uneasy. They had tested the humans, and the humans had survived, not through firepower, but through unity, focus, and fearlessness. The small ship that should have been destroyed now seemed almost untouchable. Rena looked at Ellis, awe in her eyes. "Commander, they're not attacking anymore. Are they afraid of us?" Ellis shook his head slowly. "No, Rena, they are confused. We didn't fight them. We didn't threaten them. We simply survived. That is the human way. That is enough to unsettle even the strongest empire." And in the silent void of space, the small human ship continued its journey, unbroken, unbowed, and quietly teaching the galaxy a lesson it had never expected. Courage and calm can be more powerful than any weapon. After the test of strength, a quiet tension filled the space between the human ship Endeavor and the Imperial fleet. The humans had survived without panic, without anger, and without a single aggressive move. That calmness unsettled the Empire more than any weapon could. Commander Ellis and his crew moved deliberately, repairing minor damage, checking shields, and adjusting navigation. Their focus never wavered, even as the massive ships of the Empire loomed like silent giants around them. Valen, the Imperial commander, studied the humans through countless sensors and psychic scans. "Why do they show no concern? Why do they not fear us?" he asked, his voice a low whisper to his officers. In all his centuries of service, he had never encountered a species so unshakable in the presence of the Empire's power. On the Endeavor, Rena shook her head. "It's strange, Commander. They expected us to panic. We survived their test without any emotion." Ellis smiled faintly. "They expected fear because fear is universal in the galaxy. But humans, we've learned to face the impossible. We survive, we adapt, and we move forward. That is our strength." The Imperial fleet had not withdrawn, but it was cautious. They were observing, scanning, and above all learning. The humans did not seek to communicate, yet they could not help but reveal themselves through simple, undeniable behavior. Their teamwork, their calmness, their curiosity about the unknown, it was teaching the Empire something new. The humans began to record everything: stars, planets, anomalies, and the strange, structured formations of the Empire itself. They asked questions, simple, logical questions, but questions that carried weight. How did the Empire navigate? How did they sustain such massive fleets? How did they organize civilizations spread across thousands of light years? Valen observed, the questions with growing unease. He had seen countless species, all fearful, all subservient, all calculating every word and movement to avoid angering the Empire. These humans, they asked questions without fear, without hesitation, without concern for punishment. They were small, fragile, but audacious. Ellis walked to the observation deck, staring at the vast Imperial ships floating silently in space. "Rena," he said softly, "do you see that? They are powerful. But look at how they hesitate. They are measuring us, trying to understand what we are, and they cannot." Rena followed his gaze. "They can't understand because we are humans?" Ellis nodded. "Exactly. Humans are unpredictable in a way that no empire can fully control. We don't calculate fear. We don't wait for permission. We just face life, and that makes us dangerous in its own way." The Imperial officers began sending observers aboard communication channels. They watched the humans sleep, eat, and discuss trivial matters. The officers were astonished. Humans could remain calm under threat and still find joy in small moments: coffee, music, laughter. It was incomprehensible. And slowly, imperceptibly, curiosity began to replace hostility. Valen realized that humans' calm and courage inspired questions, not just within him, but across his fleet. Could a species so small and seemingly weak actually carry the seeds of something larger than fear itself? Could humans, by simply being themselves, change the way the Empire thought? The crew of the Endeavor continued their work, unaware of the storm of thoughts they stirred across the Empire. They mapped star systems, noted anomalies, and occasionally laughed quietly at minor mistakes. For them, this was exploration, nothing more. For the Empire, this was a revelation. a challenge to centuries of control and power. Ellis spoke quietly to his crew, almost to himself. We don't need to fight. We don't need to command. We only need to exist as we are. Our courage, our calm, it speaks louder than any weapon. That is what changes the hearts and minds of the galaxy. And so, as the humans quietly continued their journey, they left an invisible trail of influence. The Empire watched, astonished, learning something it could never fully understand. Humans were not just surviving, they were teaching, inspiring, and unsettling a galaxy built on fear. In that vast darkness of space, one truth became clear. Sometimes the greatest power is not firepower or fleets or empires. It is the quiet, steady courage of a small, unshakable species. Weeks passed, and the humans aboard the Endeavour continued their journey through Imperial space. The massive fleet no longer fired upon them, though the warships remained close, observing, scanning, and measuring. For the humans, this was just another day, repairing equipment, recording star maps, sharing small jokes, and quietly marveling at the wonders of the galaxy. They were explorers, not conquerors, yet their very presence had begun to ripple through the Empire in ways they could never have imagined. Among the Imperial officers, whispers spread. How do they remain so calm? They are not afraid. They do not tremble. It is unnatural. Do you think they truly understand the danger they are in? No one had answers. The humans were unlike any species the Empire had ever encountered. Small, fragile, yet unshakable. Their confidence, born from experience and unity, was invisible but undeniably powerful. Commander Ellis walked quietly among his crew. "Rena, look around you," he said softly. "Notice how they watch us. Notice how they pause, even for a moment when we move. Our calm, it makes them doubt themselves." Rena nodded slowly. "It's strange, Commander. We didn't do anything.
And yet we are changing them. That was exactly what was happening."
Across Imperial space, other species, slaves, workers, soldiers, and citizens, had begun noticing the humans. They whispered stories in private, speaking of the small ship that moved through the Empire without fear, without arrogance, and without anger. Humans did not demand obedience, did not issue threats, and did not claim power. Yet the simple act of facing danger with calm courage sparked something extraordinary. Hope. Small acts began to ripple outward. A trader dared to refuse an unfair tax. A soldier questioned an order. A scholar dared to speak to an official with newfound confidence. None of these acts were violent, but they carried a message. The universe was not ruled solely by fear. Somewhere, far away, humans had shown that courage and unity could challenge even the greatest powers. Balon watched all of this unfold with growing unease. The humans had entered his space by accident, yet they had begun to ignite change. "Commander," his second-in-command said quietly, "they have not attacked, yet the galaxy is shifting. How can a single species simply exist and make others question everything?" Ellis, unaware of Vale, and concern, spoke to his crew one evening as they drifted past a giant shimmering nebula. "We are explorers, that is all. But when humans move through the universe, we carry something more than knowledge or tools. We carry courage. We carry hope. That makes a difference whether we mean to or not." Indeed, the influence was subtle but undeniable. Rebellion in the Empire was not violent, yet it was unstoppable. Laws were questioned. Ancient commands were challenged. Even high-ranking officers hesitated before making decisions that would have been routine before humans arrived. And all of this, strangely, began because the humans did not panic, did not bow, and did not seek power. Rena watched the stars streak past, a soft smile on her face. "Commander, it feels like we're not just exploring. We're inspiring." Ellis nodded, his eyes reflecting the distant cold light of 1,000 suns. "Yes, Rena. That is the power humans have, not weapons, not armies, not threats, simply being human. Our courage, our calm, our refusal to bow, those things are stronger than any fleet in the galaxy." Somewhere in the Empire, Valen recorded, Every observation, every anomaly, every small spark of rebellion. He realized a terrifying truth. Humans were not like any other species. They did not need to dominate. They did not need to conquer. Their presence alone could challenge centuries of control. And the empire, built on fear, could not fully stop them. As the Endeavor sailed quietly through the stars, the humans remained, unaware of the subtle revolution they had begun. They repaired their ship, shared stories of Earth, laughed at small jokes, and continued their exploration. Yet everywhere they passed, life changed. Small sparks of courage flared in beings who had once only known fear. The Empire had entered a new era, not because of war, but because humans simply existed. And in that quiet, invisible revolution, the galaxy learned a truth humans had always known. Courage and hope, even in the smallest forms, are impossible to contain. The humans' journey through imperial space had not gone unnoticed. Stories of their calm and courage spread quickly, reaching the highest levels of the Empire. Finally, the Emperor himself demanded a trial of the humans. The Endeavor was summoned to the imperial capital, a massive, gleaming station that stretched across the void like a silver fortress. Commander Ellis guided his crew with quiet confidence. "Rena, stay alert. This is new, but remember, we face every challenge the same way. Calmly, carefully, together." As they entered the capital, the humans were met with an imposing council chamber. Beings of every species in the Empire sat in high, carved seats, their eyes fixed on the small human ship. The air was heavy with centuries of authority, power, and expectation. The council expected fear. They expected trembling excuses or pleas for mercy. Ellis stepped forward, his posture straight, his expression calm. "We are humans," he said simply. "We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. We came here by accident. But if survival means standing up, we stand." The Emperor's gaze, cold and piercing, swept over them. "You dare enter my empire uninvited, unafraid, and unrepentant. Explain yourselves," Rena whispered to Ellis, her voice tense. "Commander, they are immense. What if they decide to destroy us anyway?" Ellis shook his head slightly, a quiet smile on his lips. "They may be immense, Rena, but we do not fear size. We do not fear power. Fear is theirs, not ours. Remember that." The council erupted into debate. Some members demanded immediate execution, calling the humans arrogant and reckless. Others argued for observation, fascinated by this species that did not behave like any they had known. The humans listened quietly, their expressions calm, as if the weight of centuries of imperial power meant little to them. Valen, standing at the edge of the chamber, observed the humans with growing concern. Their courage was contagious. Even within the council, some members began to hesitate, questioning the assumptions of the Empire. Could it be possible that a species so small, so fragile, could inspire courage and defiance simply by existing? Finally, the Emperor spoke again, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You claim to fear nothing. You face the impossible with calm. You do not seek power. Why should we spare you?" Ellis met his gaze steadily. "Because we do not need to conquer. We do not need to dominate. We survive because we act together, because we face what comes, because we refuse to bow to fear. That is our nature. That is what makes humans human." The council was silent. Never before had a species spoken with such clarity, such confidence, and such calm in the presence of ultimate power. Some felt challenged, others intrigued, and a few deeply unsettled. The humans were small, yet in their composure they radiated strength that could not be measured in weapons or numbers. Rena glanced at Ellis, her eyes wide. "Commander, it feels like they are listening to us." Ellis nodded. "Yes, that is the power of being human. Not violence, not firepower, not intimidation. Courage, calm, and honesty. That is enough to make even the greatest empire pause." The Emperor studied them, and for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. This species, so simple in appearance, had entered his empire uninvited and shown nothing but courage. They did not threaten. They did not beg. They did not panic. And yet in their silence and composure, they had already begun to change the hearts and minds of the council. The humans left the chamber without a fight, unbowed and unbroken. They returned to the Endeavor, unaware of the stir they had caused. The council had been challenged not by weapons, not by armies, but by the quiet, unshakable spirit of a species that refused to fear. And somewhere deep within the Empire, a realization grew. Power is not measured by fleets or planets alone. It is also measured by courage, by conviction, and by the ability to stand firm when all the universe seems against you. Humans had shown this truth, and the Empire would never forget it. The human ship Endeavor drifted away from the Imperial capital, silent and unassuming against the glittering stars. The crew worked quietly, checking systems, repairing minor damage and sharing small smiles and quiet laughter. For them, it was another day of exploration, another step into the unknown. Yet across the vast empire, their presence lingered like a whisper in the halls of power, an echo that would not fade. Commander Ellis stood on the observation deck, staring into the infinite black of space. "Rena," he said softly. "Do you feel it?" Rena followed his gaze. "The way they're watching us?" Ellis shook his head gently. "Not watching. Feeling. Humans have a way of leaving a mark, even without trying. We did not conquer. We did not fight. We simply were human, and that is enough to change everything." Indeed, the humans had left a mark. In the weeks that followed, whispers spread throughout the Empire. Soldiers questioned orders. Citizens dared small acts of courage. Scholars and officials debated ideas they had once accepted without thought. The humans had not intended to inspire rebellion, yet their calm courage had awakened hope, a spark of freedom in a galaxy ruled by fear. Valen, once rigid and unshakable, paced the corridors of the Imperial fleet. He could not forget the humans. There, calm in the face of overwhelming power, their small ship moving through his fleet without panic or hesitation. "They are not like any species I have known," he admitted aloud. "They do not fight. They do not bow. And yet they are unstoppable, in a way we cannot measure." In private, some members of the council whispered their agreement. The humans had reminded them of something long forgotten, that courage and unity could outweigh size and weapons. The Empire had been built on fear, but fear alone could no longer contain the seeds the humans had sown. On board the Endeavor, the crew remained blissfully unaware of the ripple they had caused. They repaired equipment, studied star systems, and shared stories of Earth, its oceans, mountains, cities, and small acts of kindness that had shaped their world. These stories were simple, yet they carried a quiet strength, reflecting the resilience of their species. Rena smiled as she adjusted the shields. "Commander, it feels strange. We didn't fight anyone. We didn't conquer anything. And yet, somehow, everything has changed." Ellis placed a hand on her shoulder. "That is the human way, Rena. We do not seek glory or recognition. We do not dominate or destroy. We face life together and remain unbroken. Courage is more contagious than fear, and hope is more powerful than any fleet." Far away, in the shadowed corners of the Empire, the Emperor stared at reports from his officers. The humans were gone, yet the changes they had inspired continued. He had commanded them to be tested, to be destroyed if necessary, and yet they had survived, unshaken. He realized reluctantly that the humans had taught him something no council meeting or battle could ever convey. Power was not only in weapons, but in the spirit to face the impossible and remain unafraid. The Endeavor moved onward, leaving a trail of light among the stars. The humans never boasted of victory. They never claimed triumph. They simply returned to their mission of exploration, unaware of how deeply they had touched an entire galaxy. Ellis looked back one last time at the glittering remnants of the Empire behind them. "We didn't conquer," he said softly. "We didn't need to. We simply were human. And that is unstoppable. Rena nodded, a quiet awe in her voice. Unstoppable indeed. As the stars stretched infinitely ahead, a new truth settled across the empire and beyond. Sometimes, the greatest power in the universe is not fleets, not weapons, not empires, it is the